My name is Ryan White. I'm the Director of Advising and also of first-year seminars, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I love this day. And I also just want to give thanks to, I work with some really great people for this event, the folks already up here on the stage, but especially the students, Brandon, Carissa, Diana, thank you, and also to the students in the registrar's office where I work, in particular Laura, Andrew, and Sam, those are names that some of you have already been talking to those student leaders this summer, answering some of your questions, so thank you to them. I want to first start out by saying to the parents, I can empathize, I think, with some of those emotions you're going through as you send your son or daughter off to college. I, too, this past year, sent a child off to school for the first time. His name was James. Here he is. It's not quite the same, but it was still emotional, right? I was still seeing him getting on that bus for the first time. So I can empathize a little bit. Well, here's our agenda for the rest of our time in this main session. We're going to talk about three things, and I could talk about each of these for hours. The good news is I'm not going to, that I'm just going to talk about each of them for a little bit. We're going to talk some about the academic transition between high school and college. We'll talk a little about some surprising information related to academic majors and coursework and professions. And we'll also talk a little bit to bridge some information about our curriculum and the registration processes to the rest of the day. So that's where we're headed. The reason we start out like this is because you, students, you tell us things, and we hear from you things like, well, this isn't exactly what I expected. It was a little different than my college experiences. And here are some of the things that Hope College students tell us, not all of them, but many of them. They say that these things were a little different from high school to college. And we just want to highlight those to have them in the back of your mind, especially this first one. Class time and study time are flipped. This is huge. It's really different. And you heard me say it if you came to Admitted Student Day, and you'll hear me say it again at orientation, because it's big. So in high school, you're in class like this much of the day, right? And then you're kind of expected to do homework about this amount of time. And then when you get to college, for most of you, that's flipped. You're in class about this much time, but you're expected to do about this much work throughout the day. So that's really different. So you're going to get your schedule maybe July 29th. Some of you might see like, whoa, I don't have any class between 10 and 3. Like, it's time to get good at Madden or whatever it is you think would be good to fill that time in with. But that is time that we're hoping you will invest in some of that homework. Number 2, students are expected to read and know material not covered in class. So you might show up on day 2. There was a reading assignment. And to start the class, the professor may say, Julie? Jolie? Jolie. What did you think about that? Did you have any questions with that reading that you'd like to share with everyone else? So you really want to be prepared from day one to do what was assigned. Number 3, beyond memorization, students are really asked and expected, and it's exciting and it's fun to make connections with the material. Why does this matter? What's the purpose of this information? And to demonstrate that, I am going to give you your first ever Hope College quiz. So if you could grab a pen or a pencil if you have one, something to write with, or you can just flip over one of your handouts. You're about to get your first Hope College quiz. Parents, you're welcome to take the quiz as well. So what I'm going to do for this quiz, I'm going to put up some letters on the board for about 10 seconds, okay? I'm going to put some letters up for 10 seconds. I don't want you to write anything down. I just want you to kind of study those letters. Then I'll take them down and we'll talk about what to do with them. Ready? Okay, now I would like you to write down those letters as best you can. No whispering, you can't cheat on your first quiz. I'm just kidding. It's okay. Okay, there's a second question on this quiz. It's the same thing, though. I'm going to put up some letters for about 10 seconds. Don't write them down while you're looking at them, and then I'm going to take them down, and we'll talk about what to do with them. Okay, same thing. Write down what you can remember on a different part of the paper. So, if you didn't already notice, it's the same list, right? Same list of letters in the same order. So it's almost identical information. Who did better the second time? Right, almost everyone. So why is that, Sally? Yeah, so Sally said they're in some sort of order that we could recognize. Right on. That's a great answer, Sally, and that's right on the money. So we've organized and chunked the information differently into kind of recognizable pieces, and we're drawing on prior knowledge. One of the ways that learning happens is when you connect new information to previously learned information. So some of you have a scheme for these letters, like government schemes like USA, CIA, FBI, or maybe you have cable channel schemes like MTV, HBO, right? So we're connecting new information to prior learned information. Why am I pointing this out? Because we want to help make connections in meaning and not just give you information. So you might also, kind of at a more in-depth level, maybe you get a chemistry assignment that's not just discuss a certain compound or the formula to achieve it. You might get an assignment that is something like, design the compounds you're going to need for a playground for 5 to 7-year-olds. So now you need to do all kinds of things, right? There's psychology involved, developmental psychology. Well, what are students like then? There's physiology. How big are they? Like, what's the kind of movement they're capable of? And then you go into design some of the components of it. So you might have some really integrative work like that so that we can help connect information to its meaning and purpose. Number 4, the speed with which material is covered is often faster than before. Cramming doesn't work as well. So students, how many of this is kind of a trick question. How many of you here were admitted to Hope College? Yeah, all of you. You're incoming students, right? Yeah, of course. So that means you're bright. That means you're bright. It means you did well in high school. And there might be a few of you who were able to not always keep up in the way your high school teachers wanted you to, but you could kind of cram a little bit at the end for that exam or that paper. That doesn't work quite as well in college simply because there's more information and there's more at-home expectation. The last one of these I'm going to mention is that some professors will check to see that you're kind of kept up on things, and some won't. Students, you're in charge of your academic record. You're in charge of your grades. You are kind of in charge of monitoring that information. So we have lots of professors that will, they'll notice that Jolie was absent, and they might reach out and say, is everything all right? I noticed you missed 2 classes. And one of your professors might do that, but one might not. And if you miss an exam, one of your professors might email you and say, you missed the exam. Is everything okay? And one might just write down a 0 in the grade book and not say anything about it. It's up to you to be in charge of your own academic record. Now, don't hear me wrong. We have wonderful faculty who care deeply about you, who will invest lots of time in you. But they also want you to be a self-directed learner along the way. And so the good news is you can do this. Every year we get a new group of bright, talented students in like yourselves, and you can do it, and there's lots of supports, your advisor, your professors. We have offices on campus that exist just to support you, the Academic Success Center, a writing center, and of course, your family will continue to be a major source of support. So those are a couple notes just on high school to college differences, and I especially want you to keep in mind that class time is flipped piece. That will be really important for you as you seek to kind of monitor your own use of time once you're on campus. The second piece that we're going to talk about today is this kind of academic majors information. Sometimes when we go to select classes, like you guys are already thinking about and that we're going to do in our advising sessions, we feel like we need to know like everything. We need to have the future mapped out in order to know like, well, if I'm only going to take chemistry if I'm going to be a doctor. So if I'm not going to be a doctor, then I'm not going to take chemistry. So we'll sometimes kind of put those kind of pressures on ourselves. And often the information that builds to some of those pressures is not always true information. So we're going to kind of try to highlight some myths and truths about courses, majors, and jobs right now. So first I want to just recognize students, your context. Many of you, not all of you, but many of you have been hearing, right, for the last year or two, where are you going to go to college? What are you going to major in? Hannah, we're going to go to college. What are you going to major in? She's like, hope. Yeah. So you've been getting these questions, and you start to get advice like, well, you know what, Hannah? A business degree, it's a good practical option, right? You get a job with a business degree. And then others might say, Hannah, but you got to do what you love. Because if you're not doing what you love, what are you really doing, Hannah? Right? And then others will say, like, yeah, but what if Hannah loves art? What are you really going to do with that art degree? Right, Hannah? So you kind of get these competing voices. Some of you have kind of family hopes or expectations, maybe to be the first lawyer, the first doctor, the next lawyer, the next doctor. And people ask these questions because they care. And they want to know what matters to you. They want to hear from you. But these are difficult questions, and I start this section just to say that many students feel some anxiety about these types of questions. It's great if you don't, but many do. And most students think that their peers have it a little more figured out than they do. So that's a little secret that you don't always let each other in on, that most of you kind of think, the person next to me probably is a little more figured out than I do. But we're all still figuring it out. So what we're going to do next is to take a look at a few really well-established, successful people. We're going to look at 4, we're looking at what they majored in, and kind of talk about the information we might be able to draw from that. The first person is Chad Hurley. He's the co-founder and CEO of YouTube. Okay? So Jolie, have you heard of YouTube? It's a video sharing platform on the internet. Jolie has heard of YouTube, so this is good. So he started it. He ran it for like a year and a half, and then he sold it to Google for $1.7 billion. Okay? I've heard, I don't know them, but I've heard his parents are proud. Right? He's doing well. What did he major in? What do you think? He was a fine arts major. So, our fine arts folks are often creative, and they often have a real ability to see things in a different way, right? To look at things with a different perspective. And some of them have an entrepreneurial spirit, maybe not all of them, but many of them can kind of move that different perspective into an entrepreneurial idea. So YouTube is not the biggest, most complex set of computer coding and web coding out there. It's a big idea about how we share stuff with one another. And with that in mind, it kind of makes sense how Chad Hurley might have created that. Next person, Connie Chung. So she was a really successful journalist. Students, you may not know who this is. Parents, please tell me you do, right? You remember Connie Chung. Thank you. So she was, students, for those that don't know, one of the most successful network news anchors in the 1980s and 1990s. What do you think she majored in? I kind of almost heard a little bit of everything. So, if you wondered if I'm reverse tricking you, I guess. Yeah, she was a journalism major. Why do I share that? Well, because some of you here came with a goal, and you're going to study that thing, and you're going to do that thing, and you're going to be successful, and it's going to be great. And that was Connie Chung's story, and that will be the story for some of you here, although it's not usually the most common story. Most of us have a few more twists and turns in our story. J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter author. She was a double major, so I've eliminated quite a few mistakes. Any ideas? Her majors really contributed to her ability to write and to create Harry Potter. I heard French. I heard classics. You guys are on the ball. It was French and classics. So French, kind of like English, maybe this use of language and literature. And classics, maybe you can see how classics as the study of ancient culture and ancient languages, you can maybe see how that might help someone develop an alternative world, particularly one that seems a little older, a little more Gothic. All right, last person that we're going to share this morning, Thurgood Marshall, lawyer, first African American to serve on the Supreme Court, particularly well known. Students, you'll recognize there was a famous case called Brown versus Board of Education. He was the lawyer arguing to desegregate schools in that case. And like some of the parents here, perhaps he kind of started in one thing and then did another. He started in dentistry and then went into law. So I share those for examples to link up to things we like to call major myths, just to talk about a few things that sometimes people have just a little bit of misinformation over. I'm going to share 3 of them. Major myth number 1 is that most people know their major and career goals when they enter college. A lot of folks tend to think that or think it should be true. The truth is, some do, but a slight majority are still deciding when they enter college. And for those who come with an intended major, roughly 60% will change that major before they graduate. And I'm not saying this is good or bad information. I'm just letting you know a little bit of what the truth is. So a good number will kind of stick to their first planned major, but a small majority will change. And that makes sense a little bit, I think, when you think about, so in high school, how many disciplines did you have? Maybe 15? And then you get to college and you're exposed to 50. Well, some of them you might not even be aware of yet unless you've looked at our academic catalog to see what all the majors are. I know some of you have done that, and you might want to do that later today in our advising sessions. Major myth number 2, I'll only have one career in my lifetime, or kind of this worry, again, that you have to have everything mapped out before you make any choices. The truth is, most folks in the age demographic of the students here will have like 10 different jobs before you retire. Now, I do want to have a side note. The higher up in education you go, the less likely that movement is. So if you have a master's degree or doctoral degree, there's less likelihood of movement, but still more than there used to be. The other thing I like to point out here is to simply say that many things, many occupations that some students here will do, maybe even some of the parents, do not exist yet. So before you retire, which is kind of funny to talk about, you haven't got to college yet, I'm talking retirement, but before some of you retire, some of you are going to do a job that doesn't exist yet. Okay? Maybe Jolie, maybe Hannah. Those are like the only name tags I can read from up here. Maybe you. Maybe you. So you can't major in it, right? You can't line everything up to do that thing. So what do we do with that information? We'll come back to that in just 1 minute. So part of my point in this section is to just say, my third major myth, that certain types of graduates or certain majors are really unemployable, or if you pick one, you'll kind of like mortgage your future and only be able to do one thing. The truth is, when you're at a liberal arts college like Hope, you're going to gain valuable, transferable skills, we like to call them. Things like writing and research and critical thinking and evidence-based decision-making and communication skills. And most majors are employed in a wide range of things. So we have some really wonderful, what we call pre-professional programs here at Hope that we're proud of, where people get prepared in their coursework for a pretty specific type of professional work. So accounting, most of our accounting majors go on to become accountants. Most of our nursing majors go on to do nursing. Most of our education majors go on to teach, although not all of them. But for most of our majors, there's not one like job result, right? So that's why you sometimes find yourself asking, or your parent might ask, yeah, but what are you going to do with that art major, or that psychology major, or that French major, or that history major, or that women's and gender study major, or that religion major, etc. You can say that for most majors because most graduates and most majors are employed in a kind of a wide range of things, although it's actually a pretty quick question to answer. So if you were asking, what can I do with that major? What can I do with that psychology major? You can answer that question kind of in about 90 seconds. If you went to our career development website, they have a little tab for student handouts, and one of them is called What Can I Do with a Major in? You click on it, you click on the major, and it will give you a list of the most common job genres by graduates in that major. It will give you professional organizations where you can look for jobs, particularly tied to that major, and then it will give you a list of Hope graduates in specific jobs in specific locations, so you can see what are Hope graduates doing. So you can answer that question pretty quickly. And so part of why I say all those major myths is just to note that in many cases, the academic major is not the equivalent of a job. It's an important contributing factor, though there are other contributing factors as well. So you might say, well, then what are some other contributing factors? I'm going to show you some survey data from one of the longest survey titles I ever referenced. It is called, the survey is the National Survey of Employers on College Learning and Graduates' Work Readiness. Basically, it was a bunch of colleges saying to a bunch of employers, what do you want more of? How can we make our graduates more hireable for you? What do you want more of? And here's what they said. These are the top choices. There are other things that are not up on this list that are lower. So the top things they said they want more of: communication skills, critical thinking, being able to apply knowledge to real-world settings, complex problem solving, ethical decision-making, collaboration, innovation, and the ability to apply developments in science and technology. What you see there are a lot of those transferable skills we were just talking about. And if you're wondering how it's working, how that works for an employment for Hope students, Hope students are doing great. So here's some recent graduate data from the class of 2015. This is taken 6 months after graduation. 95% of Hope College graduates are either in the workforce or in graduate school 6 months after graduation. So we don't have a lot of basement dwellers. Like people are moving on kind of to their next steps. And one of the students who do the survey, their number one thing they reference as the contributing factor to landing their employment was their communication skills. So all this information, all this majors information that we just looked at and browsed through, it tells us that interests can be combined in a variety of ways. It tells us that liberal arts study helps us develop these diverse, transferable skills. It tells us that Hope graduates are doing really well. But if you come, you are coming. When you come, you'll hear Hope faculty, staff, and fellow students talk not just about majors and jobs. We'll talk a lot about those things. But we'll also talk about finding a sense of calling or vocation or purpose in your life. So you'll hear that language here. We sometimes reference this quote from Frederick Buechner, a well-known theologian, that the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. So you'll hear people talking about this while you're at Hope. And we'll sit with you, and your advisor will work with you to think about, well, what do I love doing? Or if I'm not sure, what are my strengths? Or what are my interests? Or if I'm not sure, how do I figure those out? Or if I am sure, how can I apply those? How can I relate those to what's needed in the world so that I can make a difference? And we do this, and we talk about this because we believe in helping you think about how to make a difference in our global society. And we also do it so that you don't feel like this guy. Like, we want you to kind of find your fit. We want you to find your place and kind of be true to those skills and strengths that have been woven into you. Our recommendations, if you're wondering, if somebody asks, well, how do you pick your major? Here's what we usually say. Start with your personal awareness. What's your sense of strengths and skills and interests? Do you have any goals you're already bringing? Think about educational awareness. What fields are there that might match up well with some of those things? And maybe professional awareness. What are some of the experiences that can help you explore or prepare you for next steps. Maybe it's volunteering in the community. Maybe it's campus leadership. Maybe it's study abroad. Maybe it's internships. And these are things that, again, faculty and staff and your advisor will sit and help you think through and think about. Okay, we're shifting gears, the last part that we're going to use to kind of transition to the rest of the day. I want to start with highlighting a little bit of our curriculum, partly because that's one of the ways that we do all this other stuff. We want to expose you to kind of a rich, interconnected, and broad knowledge pool, and we do that somewhat through our curriculum. Before we talk specifics in the curriculum, I just want to remind you, this is just some like registration timeline stuff. You don't need to write this down. It's in your folder. It's also listed on the first year registration website page. I have this here as a reminder to myself to tell you, here's the summary of how registration for your first semester works. Hope sends you information. We've already done this. So we posted the first year registration website in May. Some of you have been looking through that. We printed materials for you here today. It's the same information as what's online. So we send you information, and then you send us your preferences. Here are the majors I'm thinking about. Here are the classes I'm thinking about. You send us your preferences. So a lot of you are going to submit those today in our online registration worksheet when you go to your advising session. But you can also wait and do that anytime between now and June 22nd. So we send you information, you send us your preferences, and then we send you back your schedule, July 29th. You'll get it by July 29th. So that's a little bit on kind of process in timeline. I harped on that class time, study time. I flipped that flipped piece a lot. Here's another thing I say as often as I can. Because it's a good thing to say from the front, and my boss, the registrar, is right here, so she likes seeing this too, right? But this is important. This is Carol DeYoung, our registrar and Dean of Academic Services. It's good from the beginning to think about, how do I graduate? Because again, students, you are in control of monitoring your academic record. So you need to keep 4 things in particular in mind. You need to complete, in order to get a degree from Hope College, you need to complete our general education curriculum. You need to complete an academic major. You need a total of 126 credits earned, and you need a GPA of 2.0 or higher, both cumulative and in your academic major courses. So those are good to keep in mind. Those are not written down, but you'll hear those again. But those would be good things to jot down maybe on your sheet. Those are important to kind of always have in the back of your mind. Well, let me talk a little bit about our general education requirements. You have a handout. You have more detail on this in your folder. But this is also somewhat for the parents, so you can hear a little bit of the information that students will be getting when they're in their advising sessions. So I'm going to kind of just do a quick run-through of our general education curriculum. What that means is the classes that everybody takes, no matter what major you're in. So everyone is going to take some version of these courses. So everybody at Hope is going to take a first-year seminar in your first semester. So this is a 2-credit class on some sort of intellectually engaging topic. Here are some titles from this year that maybe some of you have already seen. Friendship and Its Enemies, Harry Potter and the Flying Dutchman, Choices, Jails, Justice and the Artist Response, Why Do I Always Get My Best Ideas in the Shower, which is a course on creativity. So there's 39 different sections of first-year seminar. And when we say seminar, you're like, well, what is a seminar? Is that just like sitting around talking about big ideas? Kind of. Yeah, that is kind of what we mean. So you're going to be in a small class. There'll be 15 to 20 students. And you will be studying kind of these interesting, focused topics and sharing your ideas with your peers in kind of a small, close-knit setting. The other thing I'll highlight here is that your professor of your first-year seminar is your first academic advisor. So today when you go to the advising room, you won't be meeting with that person because you don't have a first-year seminar yet. So you'll be meeting with just some advisor on campus. But your first assigned academic advisor will be your first-year seminar professor, and they will remain your advisor until you declare a major. Once you declare a major, you'll get a new advisor in that department. So that's a highlight on first-year seminar. The rest of these I'm going to kind of just put up to let you know that everyone does some of these. So everyone at Hope will do some science and math. whether that's biology or chemistry or geology or a variety of other areas. Everyone will do some social sciences. It could be some political science or communication or psychology or sociology. In each of these categories, you'll have choices. You won't do all of these different topics. You'll be choosing from amongst some others. Everyone does some literature, history, and philosophy. Everyone will do some religion. And when I say everyone will do, I don't mean everyone will get it out of the way or check it off the checklist. I mean, that's why you're here. You want to learn stuff, see how it relates. And this curriculum is one of the ways that we encourage that. Everyone will do some arts. Everyone will go through level 2 of a foreign language. Everyone will have some courses that have incorporated global perspectives into their course. And everyone will do a health dynamics class that works, integrates some nutrition and wellness. And all of these together, depending on some of the choices you make, will be about 52 to 55 total credits of your 126 credits required to earn that degree. And for some context, here's just the size of a few majors, just to give some examples and context. History majors, 36 credits. A French major, 28 credits beyond French 4. So it would be additional credits if you started in French 1. Physics major is 27 credits of physics, and then they have some additional sciences and math that you do as part of the major. Computer science is 34 credits. Exercise science is 39 credits. So I'm going to call, who's got reasonable math skills? Students, anybody got decent math skills? What's your name? Alex. Alex, let's say, Alex, you did 54 credits worth of gen ed, okay? And then you did the 36 credit history major. How many credits total have you done? 90. Alex got it, no hesitation, even on the spot. It's harder to add on the spot. So yes, so if you did 54 credits of gen ed, 36 credits of history, you'd be at 90 credits. How many do you need to graduate? 126. So you are quite a bit short, right? And the reason I point this out is because in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, students will have room to do some exploration, to do some different types of classes, so that even if you don't end up taking everything from the beginning that relates to your major, that will be okay, that you'll actually need those credits in the end to graduate. Another thing you could do with those kind of additional needed credits, you need 36 more in that example. You could add a minor. Minors tend to be around 20-some credits. You could add maybe potentially a second major. What that means for today is it's okay if you don't have it all figured out. Now, there are a few kind of exceptions where if there are programs you're kind of thinking about, like, well, I'm considering one of these. If you're thinking about education, particularly special ed or music ed, or engineering or nursing, or maybe pre-med. These are some where if you say, I'm thinking about doing this, you don't have to know if you're going to do it, but if I'm thinking about doing this, there are some things we'll have you do in year 1. And that's basically the information that you saw and have seen in the registration materials we've given you. So this is just a screenshot of the website that hopefully you've all seen and spent some time browsing. We've sent you all this registration information previously, but today is really about helping you kind of sift through some of it and respond to it. So to clarify things that you weren't clear on, or to clarify the process, or just to answer kind of random questions that come up as you read through things. So for the advising, now I'm just linking to the advising sessions for students today. In the advising session, just to give you some context for what it will look like, you're going to be next door, in the building next door, which is called the Martha Miller Center, and you're assigned, it's on your name tag, the name of the advisor you're meeting with. You are going to be meeting with that advisor in a classroom in Martha Miller. There will be a couple other advisors in the room. There'll be other students in the room and at your table. There'll also be some peer advisors in there. And they'll be there to do what we just talked about, help you sift through the materials and to answer questions. So that's a little bit kind of on where things are going in those meetings. I'd encourage you now and throughout the day, there's something that's labeled practice worksheet in your folder. That's a great place to take notes. for particularly anything related to your course selections. It's a good place to put questions. It's a good place to start jotting down classes you're interested in, because before you know it, that list could be really long and you might not remember all the things you were already wanting to remember and highlight. So I'd encourage you to use that kind of as a note-taking tool throughout the day, even before and after your advising appointment. And you can also share that if you're interested in talking through it with your parents, and they can look through materials as well. The last thing I'll say is you can submit that worksheet, that piece where I said the advising process, you send us your preferences. You can do that today. We have a computer lab open on the second floor in the Martha Miller Center where you can go at any time during your advising session and submit that form. The page will be pulled up on computers in the computer lab, and you're welcome to do that. You're also welcome to go home and just take what we've talked about today and submit that later on like June 22nd or anytime between now and June 22nd. The last thing I want to say is another thing to kind of just, I don't know if it's reassurance, but you don't worry about like making a mistake. You don't have to have like the most perfect, beautiful registration worksheet that's ever been submitted in 2016. And if you make a mistake and accidentally, if you wrote down that you were really interested in a music performance major, and then you wrote down a lot of biology classes, you would probably get contacted by our office to say like, oh, it's great that you're interested in music and biology, and we just kind of talk a little bit about like what would fit and what wouldn't and what would be possible. So if something really doesn't fit, there's room later for changes. So you don't have to worry like if you make a mistake that something will be written in stone forever. And the other thing I would say is after you do get your schedule, you'll get your advisor, and you will have a one-on-one meeting on the last day of orientation, the day before classes start. You will have a one-on-one meeting with your advisor, and you can even still at that point, if we need to make a change or there was some error, we can even make changes at that point. We prefer to fix anything before then, but my point is you can just do your best. You don't have to worry about making mistakes. So I'm going to pass the mic back to Chris Bowl, who's going to kind of do a couple housekeeping notes as well as kind of direct us from where we are headed next.